Make a wish! How many times have you heard that phrase just before blowing out the birthday candles? I think my mother baked a cake for me, yellow or chocolate with chocolate icing. For at least the first 22 of my birthdays, yet as I look back, I can't say that I recall any of those 22 wishes. I would guess that many of the early wishes involved toys or good grades in school, while later wishes might have involved the desire for specific romantic attachments. Although I can't say that I remember it clearly, I would also suspect that my 22nd birthday wish was something like, oh, please let me find a job when I graduate, which fortunately did come true just 6 months after that last birthday in my parents' home. So, why all this reminiscing about the wishes of birthdays past? On a whim, I picked up the book, If 1 and 2 Questions for the Game of Life, on the clearance table at the local Barnes& and Noble bookstore a few years back, and the very first question listed was, if you were to be granted one wish, what would it be? On the surface, it seems a very simple question, and yet when considering all of the possibilities, it really isn't simple at all. When I was a kid, I remember watching an ABC after-school special called The Seven Wishes of Joanna Peabody, where 12-year-old Joanna encounters the fairy godmother like Aunt Thelma, played, believe it or not, by the actress Butterfly McQueen, most famous for her role as Prissy in Gone with the Wind. As a result of her encounter with the unusual Aunt Thelma via a vintage 1970s television set, Joanna is granted 7 wishes. Aside from the caveat that wishing for more wishes is not allowed, Joanna has free rein, yet she struggles and foolishly squanders several of the wishes before finally figuring it out. So, with only one wish, there would be no room for error. The other problem with wishes is that no action in this world appears to exist in a vacuum. Although the sciences were never my strongest subjects in school, I seem to recall a law or a rule or an axiom. I never could keep those straight, but at any rate it was something more than a strong suggestion. That for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction, and therein lies the rub. How do you anticipate the reaction, the perhaps unintended consequences that are sure to accompany the granting of your wish? Wishing for material things is clearly out, for with cars and homes and other luxury items come taxes and maintenance and the threat of being robbed. Good health seems like a plausible choice, but is health too general a term? Would more than one wish be required to ensure physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health? If so, that could also be tricky. There are countless examples around the world of all kinds of people who have sharp minds but crumbling bodies, physical strength but failing minds, or those who possess both physical and intellectual power, but who are plagued by levels of moral decay and spiritual corruption nearly impossible to comprehend. All you folks in the Epstein files, I'm looking at you. Clearly, a larger and more altruistic type of wish would likely be more effective, but could there still be unintended effects? Could wishing to end hunger in one part of the world lead to food shortages in another? Does the end of a drought in one region mean the advent of dangerous flooding somewhere else? Might a miracle drug to cure cancer or AIDS lead to mutations that would lead to the formation of increasingly dangerous or virulent diseases in the future? Perhaps the key lies not in trying to reduce or eliminate the bad in the world, but rather in increasing the good. As 1940s songwriter Johnny Mercer put it, well, we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch onto the affirmative, and don't mess around with Mr. In-Between. This, however, is more easily said than done. Take, for example, the idea of the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, envy, anger, lust, gluttony, and sloth, which date back to the 4th century. Even those who are not especially religious have at least a cursory knowledge of this list, thanks, at least in part, to the 1995 movie Seven, starring Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. However, is the general population aware that there is also a list of 7 heavenly virtues? Despite having had a more extensive religious education than many, mostly because my mother was a Sunday school teacher for over 30 years, sadly I cannot recite the 7 virtues: humility, generosity, love, kindness, self-control, temperance, and zeal nearly as readily as I can relate their negative counterparts. However, since pride occupies the top spot on the list of what is wrong with our world, then perhaps the key to finding the perfect wish lies within its virtuous counterpart, humility. What wonders might be achieved by wishing for every person in the universe to demonstrate perfect humility in all that he or she does? What might that look like? In our competitive, success driven world, humility unfortunately gets a bad rap. Too often, I think the world assumes that the humble person is basically a doormat, some poor sap with welcome emblazoned across his forehead, waiting for the successful people of the world to wipe the grime from their shoes all over his chest. But is this really true? The Bible itself actually suggests otherwise. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, also known as the Beatitudes, tells us, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Matthew 5:5. Inherit the earth, the entire earth, all of it, everything, the big kahuna? That sounds more like a power move than Operation Doormat to me. The scientific community extols the benefits of humility as well. In his article, 8 Psychological Benefits to Being Humble, psychologist and author Dr. Jeremy Dean references a number of psychological research studies which indicate that humble people share the following characteristics: cope better with anxiety, perform more effectively in leadership positions, exhibit higher levels of self-control, demonstrate higher levels of academic and job performance, are less judgmental of others, and have better interpersonal relationships. If every person on the planet possessed these characteristics, would any of the current problems in the world continue to exist? Would humble people ever wage war or engage in acts of terrorism against one another? If meekness leads to higher levels of self-control, would anyone ever struggle with obesity or substance abuse? Would mass shootings, police brutality, or racial profiling ever take place in a world where the ego does not reign supreme? Would crime be eliminated? Would world leaders who subscribe to the tenets of humility ever allow pollution, climate change, unemployment, poverty, or homelessness to continue? Perhaps one simple wish, a healthy dose of humility for all of mankind, is the answer to most of society's ills. Unfortunately, much of our world merely confirms that humility is in desperate straits. Celebrities and ordinary people alike seize the spotlight through reality TV, YouTube, and social media. We are so self-absorbed that we share pictures of our dinner plates on Instagram. No longer content with the mere 15 minutes of fame predicted by Andy Warhol, technology allows us to seek fame over the course of decades, complete with subscribers and paid advertising. Therefore, implementing a wish for worldwide humility at this point would probably be similar to trying to put toothpaste back into the tube. It would take a major shift in perspective, but that isn't a profound enough reason not to try. Perhaps humility needs a publicist. Maybe humility needs to change its image. No magic genie has granted me that one super wish yet. But hey, it could still happen. Instead, I issue this challenge. Let's make humility cool. Pastor Rick Warren, author of the bestseller The Purpose-Driven Life, perhaps summed it up best when he said, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on the social media platforms listed on the screen.